You're listening to certified financial planner Doug Goldstein, host of the Goldstein on Gelt Show, www.goldsteinongelt.com.
Okay, very excited to have on the Goldstein on Gelt Show Alice Finn, who is a wealth management expert. In fact, she was featured as the Giant by Barron's in its inaugural list of the top 100 independent financial advisors. And she's the CEO of Powerhouse Assets. One of the things Alice focuses on, which in fact is a topic we talk about a lot here, is women and investing. So Alice, let me ask you, just why did you get into that?
So first of all, I just want to say I'm delighted to be here. The reason I got into focusing on women and investing is because not enough women pay attention to investing for their future. And I think there's a number of reasons for that, but I just felt like there's such a need and it's something that I can do something about.
I hear. No, it's actually something in my life that has come up quite a bit, because when I started in the business on Wall Street, I was actually partners with my mother, who was a vice president at a big firm for about 17 years. And my mother's mother had been one of the first women to be licensed as a stockbroker in America. So it used to always be funny to me when people said, oh, women don't know much about investing. And I said, I'm learning everything from women about investing. But unfortunately, as I've gotten into the business and spoken to more and more people, I see that that's not really the case. What do you attribute it to?
So, well, first of all, your mother and your grandmother sound amazing. I'd love to hear more about them some other time. But I attribute it to two main things. One is cultural and one is pragmatic. Culturally, women don't picture themselves as investors. They think, when you say investor, they think of an older man or a man with white hair. That's what the studies show. So we need to change that image, that anybody that has anything in a retirement account, in a 401k or an IRA, or in anything that they're hoping to earn a return on for the future is an investor. So most people in some way are investors, man or woman.
When you said change that image, what does someone have to do in order to change the way she looks at money?
So I and lots of other women in this industry are trying to change what it looks like to be a woman. So we're trying to just get the word out that this is something that not just men do, that women do too. And I actually wrote a book called Smart Women Love Money, 5 Simple Life-Changing Rules of Investing. So that's my most recent way to try and change that image so that women don't think that if they focus on investing, that somehow it's unfeminine.
One of the things that I find in my practice, I think you and I actually have a very similar practice, except mine's in Israel, yours is in America. But I work with a lot of women who are widows, and I try to talk to them about money. And when they'll say, oh, my husband used to always deal with that. And I say, okay, well, now it's time you deal with it. And I always try to explain, you don't have to become a money expert. You just have to become an expert about yourself and talk about what your goals are and your risk tolerances. And sometimes I find that they don't see the connection between risk tolerance and goals and money. Do you find that also?
Well, I think you're right that in that women especially, but probably men as well, some men as well, think that the whole subject of investing is daunting and risk sounds scary, et cetera. So what I do in my book is I break it down and make it so that it's pretty simple. I have 5 rules. And I explain how risk fits into that. And just getting over the idea that this is complicated and overwhelming is, I think, one of the most important things that you and I can both do to get both men and women focused on their investing in a productive way.
All right. So what's your number one rule for getting people started?
One is to invest in stocks for the long run. So I give them a perspective that had they, for example, in the early 1970s, taken $10,000 and put that in a diversified portfolio of stocks, 40 plus years later, around now, when they wanted to retire, that would be worth over $2 million. So just getting people that perspective that stocks really are the place to be and that the compounding return of stocks is like magic. If I give people that perspective, they get more motivated, excited, and I've got their attention. So that's the first thing that I do.
Always good to get people's attention. We are talking with Alice Finn, who is the CEO of Powerhouse Assets. She focuses a lot on helping women get more involved in managing their money, and she teaches this, and she's certainly written a great deal about it. Alice, let's just talk about this number one point, which is people should invest in stocks for the long run. When the market goes up and up and up, of course, people get a little bit wary. And some people say, great, it looks like we're at the beginning of a trend. And other people say, well, it must have reached a top. How does someone who wants to invest and says, well, now I'm getting a little bit older, maybe I'm already retired, and I don't see myself as a long-term investing. And, if the market's gone up a lot, what am I supposed to do? How do you explain? You say, well, let's go back to the 1970s. All of a sudden, 1970 seems a long time ago.
Right. So, but if someone's just retiring now, hopefully they have still decades ahead of them that they're going to want to live on their money, and they need to make their money work for them so that they can actually live on it. So I don't think I try not to make it a short-term perspective. So if someone's, in their mid 60s or something and they're retiring, again, they could have 30 hopefully plus years. I always plan for my clients to live to at least 100. So, because my biggest nightmare is that I'm in my 80s or 90s and I have a client that's 100 and they come and they run out of money. So people hopefully will continue to live a very long time. So even if you're just retiring, you hopefully have a long time ahead that you need your money working for you.
Mm-hmm. As we go back to real life stories, one of the areas that I've also found a lot of times is that a woman comes into my office and she's inherited money from her husband who passed away. And it is in stocks, but it's not in a broadly diversified portfolio, but it's in 4 or 5 stocks. And when I talk to her about selling them, she says, oh, well, my husband did a lot of research on these, and what am I supposed to say, right? Because I don't want to say anything. And they may even be good companies. It's just a question of whether it's really appropriate for someone to have that kind of risk. And of course, there's the tax risk of selling. How do you explain that to someone?
That's actually a typical situation that does happen. People come with something they've inherited and they feel like it embodies their loved one. The first thing I do is try to explain that, take a picture of that statement, but don't keep those investments, because whatever the decisions that got your loved one to invest in those stocks, things change. We need to look at where we are now and make a plan for your future. So fall in love with the memories, but not those particular things. So then the question is, what do you do about the tax ramifications? So that's a very good question. And sometimes you have to build a portfolio around it. Sometimes if it's in a retirement account, then of course you don't need to worry about the tax consequences because you can sell without triggering taxes. But if it's in a taxable account, it's something that you have to work on with your financial advisor to do a cost-benefit analysis.
Okay, so that's number 1 of your list. I think maybe we'll get to one more. So Alice, you said the number 1 thing is to look for the long-term investment, and stocks are a good tool, you said, for that. What's number 2 in your list of suggestions?
So it's to allocate your assets. And so the idea is to come up with a strategy of what assets do you want to invest in terms of the categories of investments, and then in what percentages. Because you and I can talk all day about whether Apple or Google or Microsoft is a better stock. But in the end, that's not as important a discussion than what percent do you want in stocks versus bonds? And then within stocks, what percent in US stocks versus international stocks? If you're living in the US, if you're living in Israel, that's a different perspective. But again, what percent in Israel versus internationally for Israelis? Then within those categories, there's large stocks, small stocks, growth stocks, value stocks. So I think in categories when I come up with an asset allocation, and that is the most important decision that an investor can make.
And do you feel the investor, him or herself, has to make that decision, or just has to decide overall what percentage of the portfolio should be in the stock market?
So if they're doing it themselves, they'll have to decide in more detail. If they're working with an investment advisor, usually just at the high level, they can have that discussion. And then they should understand what categories they're invested in and in what percentages, but they don't need to make those decisions.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's great. Listen, we've gotten through number 1 and number 2. I guess to get 3, 4, and 5 of your list, people are going to have to buy your book. Alice, we are just about at the end of our time, but tell me in the last few seconds, how can people follow you, follow your work, and get a copy of your book?
Okay, so related to the book, it's called Smart Women Love Money, 5 Simple Life-Changing Rules of Investing. You can go online anywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, many other places, and get the book, or go into your local bookstores. A lot of them have it. And then if you want to reach me, my company website is powerhouseassets.com, and you can email to info@powerhouseassets.com. And if you do, 2 things. We will send you, if you're interested, a list of questions to ask your financial advisor. So just email us and say that you would like that list to info@powerhouseassets.com. And also, we're making a list of people that would like to participate in what we call powerhouses, where we get women together in groups to talk about how to get started on investing or how to improve their investments. So you can let us know if you'd like to sign up for one of our powerhouses. That'll be happening across the country.
That sounds great. We will put links to that at the show notes of today's show at goldsteinongelt.com. Alice Finn, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I've enjoyed talking with you.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Check out all of Doug's money ideas at goldsteinongelt.com. Doug specializes in helping people who live outside the United States handle their U.S. investment accounts. If you have a question that you would like answered on the air or off, contact Doug at his website or send him an email to doug@profile-financial.com.